trade negotiations. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Paul, all three indices, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ climbed to all-time levels after China said that Sino-American trade negotiators reached consensus on certain issues in a phone call and agreed to stay in contact on the remaining points. Gene Frieda, PIMCO Global Strategist, tells Bloomberg the markets will continue to trade on any China news.
I think they're going to continue to try to trade what is effectively noise right now. What we're looking for is some evidence that you have a forcing variable in the form of a summit meeting between the two leaders. Logistically, that's become very challenging before year end. So in my mind, what we're hoping for at this stage is some kind of agreement between Liu He, Lighthizer, and Mnuchin on what might be called a preliminary phase one deal, and then having some kind of agreement signed in January.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up over 0.1%, up 5. Dow's up 0.1%, up 33, and the Nasdaq's up 0.2%, up 17. The 10-year is up 7/30 seconds. The yield is 1.72%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 0.2% at 58.11 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.25% at 14.6750 an ounce. The dollar yen stands at 109.06. The euro is $1.1014, and the British pound $1.2844. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
I remember once upon a time, way back 3 weeks ago, when people used to carry Fed Chair Jay Powell used to say, now it almost doesn't matter because the market has decided and the Fed agrees that it is on hold for the foreseeable future. Joining us now, Steve Matthews, economics reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us from our Atlanta bureau. I have to say, I started that way, Steve, because Fed Chair Jay Powell sounded an incredibly optimistic tone on the U.S. economy in his speech yesterday, saying that the U.S. economy's glass is more than half full. No one cared. Is this important to note, that no one cares?
You know, I thought they had canceled the December meeting and that Fed watchers were taking the rest of the year off. I mean, there was really no reason to be concerned about what they're going to do. I mean, he was clear yesterday that, you know, there's not going to be any rate change anytime soon.
Which we knew.
And so from that standpoint, there was nothing new. However, there were some things that were kind of interesting in the body of the speech. For one thing, the story this year has been the Fed has cut rates 3 times, and that's because of risks of the global slowdown, trade, all those things. In this speech, he put a different spin on it. He said, basically, the neutral rate of interest has declined, meaning the rate of interest where the economy basically just continues on a steady path. He said the natural rate of unemployment, again, you know, the rate of unemployment where you don't get an acceleration in inflation, that has declined. And he said that the Labor Department put out new figures which basically cut the job creation by 500,000. This was earlier in the year. And he said those were the factors that influenced the rate cuts. So if those were the factors that influenced the rate cuts, they're not going to come back. I mean, if the natural rate of unemployment has come down, that's going to stay there for a while. So it's like there's no reason to believe that they're going to ever take these back if those were the reasons for it. So it was kind of an interesting speech in that it said basically the long-term outlook for rates is, you know, you're not going to see a big uptick again, kind of making these back.
And Steve, is that kind of an admission or acknowledgement that we are, as it relates to the overall underlying U.S. economy, in a slower for longer type of period, you know, in that 2%-ish kind of range?
Yes, absolutely. We're in kind of, you know, I mean, Larry Summers refers to it as secular stagnation. Other people, I think it was PIMCO, referred to it as new normal, although that was actually coined by Rich Miller of Bloomberg. But by whatever measure you use, we're in a kind of a 2% economy. That's going to continue on, and that means that interest rates need to be lower than they would in, say, the 1990s.
Should we care at all about the emphasis on bringing people into the workforce and sort of equaling out the income gap that we've seen grow wider? And we've heard some, like, for example, Minneapolis Fed Chair, the Fed Chair was speaking about this as well, about how this is now a new mandate for the Federal Reserve. Is that important to take note of?
Yeah, it was interesting. Powell is talking like a populist. He went out of Washington to give this speech. The title of it was Building on Gains from the Long Expansion. He showed charts that showed that lower income, less educated Americans are doing better now than they were. And that was kind of a big theme of his speech, that we need to push the expansion so that those who are less well off can make up some ground. And one of the interesting things that he showed was a chart of labor force participation for the United States versus the rest of the world. And for prime age workers, the U.S. has lower labor force participation than, a dozen countries, including UK, Sweden, on and on. And the point was, we can raise that participation if we run the economy a little bit hotter. And so the underlying message was, yeah, we can push this economy and raise labor force participation and broaden the benefits to people who have not necessarily shared in the expansion to any great degree.
Steve Matthews, thanks so much for joining us. Always appreciate your thoughts on the Fed. Steve Matthews, economics reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us from the Atlanta Bureau. Lisa, I like your question about that, as it relates to income inequality. I'm just not sure what the Fed can do, per se.
Well, the sort of balance will be to hold rates lower for longer, because then you enable a growing number of people to get off the sidelines and come into the workforce, right? Which is what Jay Powell was talking about in his speech to a big degree, which is interesting because it is more of a populist message, and it is a mission drift from just preserving a certain inflation rate. I mean, This goes well beyond that. So, if this is a new measurement in terms of the Fed's mandate, that's going to be interesting going forward. We have seen that Neil Kashkari of the Minneapolis Fed has come out and explicitly said this. This is a shift. But how that plays politically in Washington, D.C. and in the 2020 elections, and also in a balance of trying to seem neutral and just supporting the U.S. economy, is a very interesting debate.
Yes, it'll be worth following, because you suggested it is a little bit of a mission shift or drift here. Looking at the markets, S&P, we are up 5 right now. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Now let's head over to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, President Trump says, quote, "We're with the protesters in Hong Kong." The president speaking as he signs an executive order setting up a task force on missing and murdered American Indians and Alaska Natives. It's his first public statement on the months of unrest in Hong Kong. It comes after Congress unanimously passed a resolution in support of the pro-democracy demonstrators, despite threats from China. President Trump says he has been speaking with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, trying for a trade deal. The Justice Department's asked a federal judge to stay her order for former White House counsel Don McGahn to testify before the House Judiciary Committee. That's as the Trump administration considers an appeal. House Intelligence Democrat Mike Quigley says the ruling could have implications for the impeachment probe.
I think it's a message to all the witnesses who obstructed and the White House for telling them not to appear. It's time to show up.
In a series of tweets, the president said people are reading too much into the ruling. The World Meteorological Organization put out a report yesterday on greenhouse gas levels, and now the UN is out with its own outlook.
And that outlook is bleak. Authors of the annual United Nations Environment Program report agree that the world has not slashed its collective greenhouse gas emissions. They have specific recommendations for the countries with the most pollution, telling China to ban all of its new coal-fired power plants and the U.S. to decarbonize its buildings and transportation systems. The report says the G20 nations have agreed to phase out fossil fuel subsidies, but none have actually set a deadline for doing so. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard? or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com.
There is simply nothing else like it. Giraffe strut, bird swoop, gazelles leap. And as the music soars, the entire Serengeti comes to life around you. This is Disney's The Lion King. Experience it at London's Lyceum Theatre. Visit thelionking.co.uk.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 21 million. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £21 million.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
At Asda this Christmas, treat them to a gift or 2, or 3. With 3 for 2 on a wide range of beauty and toiletry gift sets. From Dove, Lynx, Bayliss and Harding and many more. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Individual prices £1 to £20. Cheapest item free.
Better get it right. This ain't a game.
Black Friday deals are now on at Game. Discover huge savings on consoles, games, accessories and more. In-store and online at game.co.uk. Click and collect at your Westfield Game Store. Hurry, must end next Monday. Get it in-store. Get it online. Get it right with Game.
Better get it right. This ain't a game.
Search Game to find out more.
Going, gone. Some things just don't hang around. Like a great deal in Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Right now you can get the Samsung Galaxy S10 for just $29.99 a month. But this deal ends Sunday 1st of December. Catch it before it's gone. Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £35.99, now £29.99. Offer ends 1st of December. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Dreaming of prepping that perfect Thanksgiving feast?
Like tune in, lend a hand with our collection of cooking podcasts, like the Bon Appetit Foodcast.
All right, guys, we have 10 minutes to discuss your expertly spiced and glazed roast turkey. It starts
and
now.
Good food.
So welcome to Good Food.
Thank you for having me.
So how many years have you been hosting your own?
It varies from year to year and by my own.
Search Thanksgiving on TuneIn to take your turkey day table to the next level.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Dreaming of prepping that perfect Thanksgiving feast? Let TuneIn lend a hand with our collection of cooking podcasts, like the Bon Appetit Foodcast.
All right, guys, we have 10 minutes to discuss your expertly spiced and glazed roast turkey. It starts
and
now.
Good food.
So welcome to Good Food.
Thank you for having me.
So how many years have you been hosting your own?
It varies from year to year and by my own.
Search Thanksgiving on TuneIn to take your turkey day table to the next level.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks hit all-time highs again as gains for Disney and Best Buy countered some weak consumer confidence data and a slump in shares of discount store operator Dollar Tree. Rising hopes of a U.S.-China trade truce, upbeat domestic economic data, and third-quarter corporate earnings season get the credit for the upswing. We look at the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up 0.2% up 6. The Dow's up 0.1% up 42, and the Nasdaq's up 0.25% up 20. The 10-year is up 5/30 seconds. The yield 1.73%. West Texas Intermediate crude's up 0.1% at 58.08 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.1% at 14.6570 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.09. The euro is at $1.1013, and the British pound $1.2848. Week-long rail strike that halted shipments of oil, grains, and other stuff across Canada is threatening to take a multi-billion-dollar bite out of the economy. It's over. Teamsters Canada Rail Conference Union said it reached a tentative deal with the railway. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, I think the market consensus seems to be that the U.S. and China are inching along towards a trade negotiation, maybe a phase one type of trade deal. Our next guest isn't so sure. Kamal Sri Kumar, president of Sri Kumar Global Strategies, a good friend of the show, joins us on the phone from Santa Monica. Sri, thanks so much for joining us again. I know you've generally been cautious about the progress that's being made here between the U.S. and China. What's your current view?
Thank you for having me, Paul. And in terms of views, they haven't changed much at all in terms of the last several months. We have seen these trade talks start and go on from about March, May 2018 onward. So we have been on for more than a year and a half. We have heard several times that progress is being made. We even heard we were imminently completely resolved with the accord. And then we have gone back every time, probably with a Trump tweet or with a different move or different camps within the Trump administration. I don't think this is any different. I think the basic problem is what the United States is demanding of the Chinese, namely in terms of protection of intellectual property rights, the ability to supervise that it is being done, and to make sure that forced mergers don't take place. That is something it is going to be impossible for the Chinese to concede. So either President Trump declares victory and then comes away with whatever he has, or else nothing happens. I think in either case, we are left with no complete accord before the November 2020 elections.
Okay, so that's what a lot of people are actually saying, that we're heading into 2020 with the best case scenario, a removal or a lack of implementation of the December tariffs that would hit some of the consumer products in the United States more extremely, and just sort of a sense that we're on hold here. Given that backdrop, let's make that assumption. What does that mean in terms of the effect on growth? Is it just sort of all systems go, everything's set to rally in 2020?
Given that, Lisa, then as far as the U.S. reaction to it is concerned, though the equity markets which went up in anticipation of something being reached, once it is clear that there will be nothing for another year, they back off because the discounting of the trade accord is one part of the equity run-up. Second thing, the uncertainty for capital spending in the United States, which has affected capital spending in recent quarters, is not going to go away, especially with the trade uncertainty continuing. Third, we are finding out that global trade has slowed significantly based on numbers which were released in the last couple of days. And that too suggests to me that is going to go hand in hand with slower global growth. And so my expectation still continues to be, Lisa, that we go into a recession starting about the middle of 2020 in the United States and global growth being significantly slower than in the past.
So, Sri, the Hong Kong situation is making it presumably much more difficult on the trade front, even though, there's talk that maybe they're trying to keep separate parallel paths there. How do you think the two are intertwined?
The two are very intertwined. Whatever they say, whatever the two sides may come out and say, I don't think they can keep them apart. And the reason is, let's assume that we have some form of a tentative trade accord in the next few days. And then the Hong Kong protests continue. And the Chinese forces in turn are sent across the water into Hong Kong from the mainland in order to put down the demonstration. Then all bets are off. Hong Kong loses its special trade privileges according to U.S. Congress determination. In the next 10 days, in fact, only a week left for the president to decide whether he's going to sign off on the Hong Kong support bill, which passed unanimously in the U.S. Senate and with only one dissent in the U.S. House. If he does not do anything, it becomes law at the passage of 10 days, and that's not going to please the Chinese. Paul, putting it all together, even if you announce an accord, it doesn't get implemented, or there are a few tweets essentially backing off from the accord after that. So I think they are very closely intertwined, and I see no easy resolution to the Hong Kong situation. You cannot let the protests continue indefinitely because that in turn gives a signal to minority groups on the mainland that it's okay to do so. On the other hand, if it is put down violently, that wouldn't go well with the U.S. Congress. Even if President Trump may tolerate it, right. U.S. Congress is not going to.
So you have growing unrest in Hong Kong and the questions about what the international response is going to be in terms of toward Beijing, those tensions rising. U.S.-China not getting necessarily closer to any kind of real trade deal. The idea of that actually solidifying seems somewhat more remote now than it did, say, 12 or 18 months ago. So buy stocks?
Buy stocks in the setup? No, I would say this is not a good scenario for buying stocks at all.
Right. Well, so that's actually, I mean, that's counterintuitive, and the reason why I said that is because everyone who comes on says, well, they're bearish, they're bullish on risk heading into the first half of 2020.
I'm not bullish on risk. Okay. Moving into 2020, I see the fourth quarter. We have already seen the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta looking for something like 0.5% growth. This is much slower than earlier quarters. Today we found out that the U.S. consumer confidence number is down for the fourth month in a row. You're going to go into 2020, and if, Lisa, on top of all this, you're going to add trade uncertainty, I don't see how risk assets are benefiting. Lastly, look at the signal from the U.S. Treasury market in the last couple of days. Even as the equities have rallied, Treasury yields have come down. And if you look back at past recessions, particularly the 2007-2009 recession, the bond market was a very accurate predictor of the recession to come, and the equities were rallying 8 months into the recession. So you have to see which signal you're going to take. It is possible that equity investors will still hold on in the first part of 2020, in which case I think disappointment will come more like mid to late 2020.
Kamal Sri Kumar, thank you so much for being with us, of Sri Kumar Global Strategies, president of the company. Interesting to hear this setup because it doesn't sound very bullish, and yet the consensus right now, I mean, Sri Kumar actually has an anti-consensus call saying that he's bearish on risk assets heading into 2020 because most people who I'm speaking to right now, they're pretty bullish.
Yep, absolutely. No, Sri is, I think, very much out of consensus. Interesting to get his very informed opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we are seeing at least a feeling that the comps, the comparison numbers for this year versus last year are probably, or next year versus this year will be pretty good because this year wasn't that great. So yay, throw a party. We will have more on that. Coming up, Bloomberg Balance of Power with David Weston, digging into all things Washington, D.C. I'm Lisa Abramowitz, my co-host, colleague, Paul Sweeney, here with me. This is Bloomberg Markets.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. Deals
At Lidl, we're big on those little reasons to be jolly. Like our delicious Favorina all butter mini Stollen bites for just $1.99 and 6 deluxe mince pies for just $1.35. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Please.
Sure, no problem.
See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. For exclusive Black Friday offers on selected video doorbells and cameras, visit ring.com and major retailers.
Better get it right. This ain't a game.
Black Friday deals are now on at Game. Discover huge savings on consoles, games, accessories and more. In-store and online at game.co.uk. Click and collect at your Westfield Game Store. Hurry, must end next Monday. Get it in store. Get it online. Get it right with Game.
Better get it right. This ain't a game.
Search Game to find out more.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium. This Thanksgiving Thursday, hear the home and away call as TuneIn features all 3 Thursday games, starting at 12:30 p.m. Eastern with the Bears at the Lions. Then, at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, the Bills at the Dallas Cowboys. And to wrap it up, eat your pumpkin pie while listening to the New Orleans Saints at the Atlanta Falcons at 8:20 p.m. Eastern. At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
The world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston, and welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today, Tom Orlik from Washington on the latest economic data and also the latest on U.S.-China trade talks. Also with us, Greg Farrell on President Trump's growing list of subpoena disputes in the federal courts. So start with Tom. So there were these data out on the consumer confidence, down a little bit, but still relatively high historically.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got consumer confidence for November coming in at 125.5, down a fraction from just above 1.126 in October. So that's a bit of a surprise. U.S. unemployment is very low. Markets are buoyant. There's optimism about the prospects for a trade deal. So the markets were looking for a stable or even slightly stronger consumer confidence reading. That said, David, that the number for November is a number which remains very high in historical comparison. The consumer is not falling off a cliff, and that's important because as we look into 2020, it's the consumer which is going to be doing the legwork in driving U.S. growth.
So, Tom, you're our chief economist here, so let me put you on the spot because it seems like different data come in different directions. We also had new housing starts that looked encouraging, pretty good. We had University of Michigan, I think consumer was pretty high. It seems like it's sort of up and down. Can you really get a clear picture of where the U.S. economy is right now?
So our view, David, is that we are looking at a slowdown, but certainly not a meltdown. And the key way to look at this is through the lens of the job data. A year ago, even at the beginning of 2019, we were looking at a U.S. economy creating a very solid 200,000 new jobs a month. Here we are at the end of 2019. The run rate has come down considerably. We're closer to 100,000 than 200,000 now. But that's still enough job creation to keep unemployment at a near 50-year low, to keep wage growth at a very solid 3% or even a little bit higher. And with that unemployment rate and that pace of wage growth, we're looking at robust consumption. And for 2020, fourth quarter of 2019 and into 2020, yes, we're looking at a slowdown in growth, but recession fears, remember those recession fears everyone was talking about even a few months ago on the back of the inverted yield curve, those recession fears are looking increasingly overdone. So
you, as so many economists tell us, really it's all about the U.S. consumer right now is keeping this economy going as strongly as it is. Put that together with the U.S.-China trade developments. We heard they're at least talking on the telephone this morning. I think the U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer with Lou Her were talking on the telephone. How dependent is the U.S. consumer on what goes on in those telephone conversations?
So there's clearly a relationship, but for both China and the US, we're talking about continental economies. We're talking about economies where the bulk of the action is domestic, and that's especially true for the United States. So yes, if we had more tariffs, if we had exports weakening, that would certainly be bad news for the U.S. manufacturing sector. There'd be some pass-through to the jobs data, there'd be some pass-through to consumption, but trade is not the dominant factor moving U.S. labor markets. I think the more direct relationship right now, the more immediate pass-through is going to be to confidence and to markets. We've had markets returning to record highs, touching fresh highs, as the U.S. administration, from Donald Trump down, stoke hopes of a trade deal. If we get that deal, markets are going to stay high, confidence is going to stay buoyant. If for some reason something breaks down, and of course that's happened multiple times in the past, that's going to be bad news for markets. We'd expect to pass through to confidence and then to the real economy.
Okay, Tom, so good to have you on. Thank you very much. So Tom Orlick reporting from Washington. He is the chief economist with Bloomberg Economics. And now we go to Greg Farrell right here in New York for some law stuff. Let's talk about all these now subpoena lawsuits that are going. We had yet another one yesterday. Don McGahn, the former White House counsel, and the district court said, what are you thinking, that you can keep him from appearing, Mr. President? You don't have that authority.
Absolutely. It was unequivocal from the district judge. But of course, now that's going to be appealed. It doesn't mean that McGahn necessarily has to testify right now. But it's yet another in a series of losses of this kind for the Trump administration. However, by following, rigidly to the process, he's able to kick the can down the road, and weeks or months will go by.
Well, another proceeding that you and I have been following here is the Cy Vance proceeding. The district attorney here in New York is pursuing some tax records held by the accountant of President Trump. That's now up in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court took action yesterday saying, okay, you don't give over the records yet, but we want you to get your briefs in right away.
Yes, quickly. So accelerated briefing on the local case. And I don't think we'll have to wait for June on that. The briefings, I think, are scheduled over the next few weeks. And, it should be much more timely than the normal process with the Supreme Court.
In the meantime, we have Rudy Giuliani. You wrote a piece yesterday, actually, about Rudy Giuliani. What was going on with Ukraine? It turns out he had a lot going on in Ukraine. Some of it personal, maybe some of it professional.
Yes, for a guy who has said that he has only one client, and that's President Donald Trump, he does seem to have a lot of irons in the fire. And we reported yesterday that he almost got involved in a case against a Ukrainian billionaire named Kolomoisky, who's not well known except that he is believed to have close ties to the new president.
Exactly.
The guy who is the subject of a pressure campaign about political investigation. So Rudy seems to be, have a very busy travel schedule and a lot of people he talks to around the world.
Well, at least some reports that perhaps he might have been representing to Mr. Kolomoisky and also another very wealthy Ukrainian, that maybe he could help him with a little bit of the problems they were having with the Department of Justice.
Certainly in the case of Dmitry Firtash, yes. We wrote about that a month ago, that Firtash had some indirect relationship with Giuliani that seemed to be an attempt to make his case go away. On the other hand, the Kolomoisky, I think Giuliani seemed to be having talks about the side that was against him. So, yes, he's playing several different sides of the Ukrainian oligarch game.
Thank goodness you're keeping us all straight, because I certainly couldn't. Okay, many thanks to Greg Farrell of Bloomberg News. And now it's time to find out how the markets are reacting to today's top stories. Joining us now is Abigail Doolittle. Well, it looks green to me right now as I look at it.
It is green, but a little bit of a snooze fest, really small moves at this point. But we do have record highs. That's worth noting. And I thought it was pretty interesting what Tom Orlick said in terms of it being a slowdown, but not a meltdown. It reminds me of the earnings season that we're coming out of right now. Better than feared, people thinking it's going to get better. And that's good enough for investors right now to just keep this slow melt up going. So long as nothing really bad happens, it seems as though we are in this cruise control of stocks going higher. Although I will point out, we once again have bonds rallying. Over the last 11 sessions, bonds up 9 of those 11 days. So it tells you some investors are a little bit concerned.
Okay, that's the question I must say I have about almost this entire year.
Yes.
How can the stock market keep going up and bonds have actually been holding up pretty well? Normally you expect an inverse relationship, and not so much this year.
Yeah, you're right about that. So what we're looking at probably for the first 6 to 9 months of the year, the expectation that the Fed was going to lower rates, that happened, so that really helped out stocks. But now that we have the Fed on pause, but we have yields going back lower, it's a little bit of a conundrum. It suggests that maybe some investors think that there is going to be some sort of an actual more of a slowdown where the Fed may have to start lowering more or somehow bring in some accommodation. Maybe that repo window stays open. But it suggests the liquidity you were talking about yesterday could gain even more. But it's something to keep an eye on. When you have two asset classes diverging, there's something's got to give. They will come back together at some point to make sense.
Some people say one has to give. Either the bond market's right or the stock market's right. They can't both be right.
And most will say that the bond investors are smarter than the stock investors. I used to be an equity person, so maybe I take a little bit of pardon or offense to that. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because right now we do have that divergence happening.
Okay, thanks so much to Abigail Doolittle. And now we're going to turn to Mark Crumpton. He's here for Bloomberg First Word News. Mark?
David, U.S. senators are saying they'll work fast to punish Turkey over testing a Russian air defense system. Lawmakers are considering proposals that would sanction the NATO ally, both for the missile system and for the offensive in northern Syria. The sanctions could include an asset freeze, limits on credit, and visa restrictions. Thousands of Palestinian protesters took part in a day of rage across the occupied West Bank today. Some groups clashed with Israeli forces in Ramallah to protest the U.S. announcement that it no longer believes Israeli settlements violate international law. They burned Israeli and U.S. flags as well as posters of President Trump. Demonstrators also held signs saying that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should be sent to prison. He was indicted on corruption charges last week. Former Chilean President Michelle Bachelet says that she has put together a United Nations team to examine allegations of police abuse in the country.
It looks like there has been certain difficulties with the protocols if we look at the damages, the elections, etc. But I will wait until my team will come back and give a full report so we can really do what we need to do, is to do the report, but mainly do recommendations.
Chile's government has come under stark criticism for its police tactics. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam didn't make any new concessions in her first comments since pro-democracy forces won local elections over the weekend by a landslide. Speaking To reporters, Lamb did acknowledge the vote reflected, quote, unhappiness with the current government and called for peaceful discussions.
The priority for us now is to properly follow up on actions proposed, including community dialogue. After these 5 or 6 months, Hong Kong people have realized very clearly that Hong Kong can no longer tolerate this chaotic situation. Everybody wants to go back to their normal life, and this requires the concerted efforts of every one of us.
Lamb's comments reiterate the plan she outlined more than 2 months ago, one protesters have already rejected. She also said she has, quote, not been held accountable by Beijing for the outcome of the elections. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks very much, Mark. Coming up, a tale of presidents and kings. A federal district court draws the distinction and rules former White House counsel Don McGahn must testify to Congress. Our panel takes us through the ramifications. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Pickets.
From the bit. 1 in 10 Londoners surveyed said they'll give more to charity in the next 12 months. Are you one of them? At CAF, we help generous people like you support their favourite charities by making giving simple. And we provide charities with the tools they need to perform at their best. So together, we can make a bigger difference for our communities. We're a charity and a champion for better giving. We are CAF, and we make giving count. Visit cafonline.org to find out more.
There is simply nothing else like it. Giraffe strut, birds swoop, gazelles leap. And as the music soars, the entire Serengeti comes to life around you. This is Disney's The Lion King. Experience it at London's Lyceum Theatre. Visit thelionking.co.uk.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
Keys? Check. Lunchbox? Check. 8-year-old ready to go? Check. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new segregated section of Cycleway 4 under construction on the A200 Creek Road around the junction with Deptford Church Street. So expect delays due to lane closures. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Hello, I'm Jo Brand. When I see people homeless over Christmas, I find it really upsetting. Whether they're sleeping in doorways, on buses, or in hostels, it just shouldn't be happening. But it doesn't have to be like this. This Christmas, crisis centres across Britain are providing warmth and safety, plus long-term support to find people a job and a home. Please reserve a place for someone at Crisis this Christmas for just £28.87. Go to crisis.org.uk now. Thank you.
At Asda this Christmas, treat them to a gift or 2, or 3, with 3 for 2 on a wide range of beauty and toiletry gift sets from Dove, Lynx, Bayliss and Harding and many more. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Individual prices £1 to £20. Cheapest item free.
Like all good tradespeople, Ford likes an early start too. That's why our Black Friday has already begun. Enjoy amazing savings across our hard-working range of new commercial vehicles. Save between £2,500 and £9,650 off the recommended retail price. Why wait until the 29th of November, when you can have that Black Friday feeling today? Plus, there's 0% APR representative on Ford Acquire. Search Ford Black Friday. Ford, backbone of Britain.
Exclusions apply. Combined promotions available till 30th of November 2019 at participating dealers. For Ford Acquire, finance subject to status and deposit restrictions apply. Free post Ford credit.
Dreaming of prepping that perfect Thanksgiving feast?
Like tune in, lend a hand with our collection of cooking podcasts, like the Bon Appetit Foodcast.
All right, guys, we have 10 minutes to discuss your expertly spiced and glazed roast turkey. It starts
and
now.
Good Food.
So welcome to Good Food.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So how many years have you been hosting your own?
It varies from year to year and by my own.
Search Thanksgiving on TuneIn to take your turkey day table to the next level.
Far wing elevates, triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on
Search
the right.
NBA today to start listening.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
From participating in above board reasonable investigation. I think the White House and I think Republicans are going to start to run out of options for how to explain that away.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Above board reasonable investigations would make sense. Right now, you're talking about executive privilege. You're also talking about a partisan investigation, a partisan attack on democracy, a partisan attacks on this presidency, and that's flat out true. It's a partisan attack. This is not bipartisan.
Yeah, well, there's almost nothing in Washington these days. It doesn't feel pretty partisan, but let's talk about what effect this might have on the election in 2020. Let's put aside for the moment, if we can, the impeachment. Most people think they know where it's going to end up. We may be wrong. Let's talk about the election. Is this inevitably having the effect of focusing the 2020 election more on foreign policy, given the involvement in Ukraine, than otherwise would be the case? Obi, what do you think?
I don't see it coming back to foreign policy long term. Short term, of course, that's all part of it. But at the end of the day, right now, with the economy where it is, we're really talking about a pocketbook election again. I think when you look at the last election, as I said on air before, the unfavorables of both candidates was so high, so much more intense than before. Pardon me. That what you're going to have this time around is, again, the same thing potentially. Many of the candidates have high unfavorables on the Democratic side. As that continues, they'll come back to pocketbook issues and they'll overlook the unfavorables.
So Joel, do you agree with that this is not enough to focus more than is typically done on foreign policy? And more important, perhaps, is does the former Vice President Joe Biden agree? Because he is running ads right now in Iowa, as I understand it, that really go pretty much to the foreign policy commander-in-chief aspect. Listen to what, in part, he says.
To be commander-in-chief, it's a sacred thing. The next president is going to face enormous challenges. We're going to need a leader who can, on day one, stand with our allies and have them know there'll be no question about the word of the next president of the United States.
So, Joel, that doesn't sound to me like a pocketbook appeal. Is the vice president onto something there?
Well, that's Joe Biden's approach, and that's his path to victory, is to position this as a commander-in-chief test between he and Donald Trump. If he can get the election to be focused on that, I think Joe Biden's going to have a lot of success through the Democratic primary. But as you know, there have been a lot of other extraneous issues, Medicare for all versus Obamacare expansion, other pocketbook issues as we talked about that have controlled the primary so far. Now, impeachment has started to impact the primary process, but that actually does not fully support Joe Biden. That actually harms Joe Biden because I think a lot of nervous Democrats think that President Trump will use the Ukraine issue and the issues related to Hunter Biden as a wedge to potentially take votes away from Joe Biden and to characterize him the same way that he did Hillary Clinton 3 years ago.
Obi, if we stop the whole election right this moment, at this moment, who among all the candidates, President Donald Trump or all the Democrats, is being benefited from the impeachment?
Oh, right now, Donald Trump, it's unifying his base, and it's taking any coverage away from all the Democrats. If you watched any of the news shows, you watch your show over time over this past week, what have you heard about? You've actually heard only about impeachment. You've heard about what's going on back in the districts. You've heard about Michael Bloomberg getting into this race. The oxygen is being sucked out of this race right now from all the Democrats by Bloomberg getting in. At the same time, with Joe Biden spending $3 million on that ad buy, you have Michael Bloomberg spending $30 million over the entire country at this point in a week. Joe Biden last report had $9 million cash on hand, if I'm not mistaken. That number is going to, of course, be eaten away at.
Yeah, David, I'd respectfully disagree with that. I actually think that impeachment has been good for Democrats. If you look at the latest poll numbers, it shows that 50% in the latest polling from Morning Consult say that they support impeachment and removal of the president. Even good numbers for Republicans show that it's a +5 or 6 issue for Democrats. And so I think the president has really got his back up against the wall here. He's not the person that's benefiting. I think Joe Biden is compromised a bit, but I think overall Democrats feel good about how they've administered the impeachment hearings and what the public fallout from that is going to be.
The Democrats blew this. The Democrats blew this when Jerry Nadler was first covering the impeachment hearings and fell off, and they put on Adam Schiff. Now you even have a Democratic congresswoman coming out and saying she may not even vote for impeachment. She thinks they got to figure out what to do and let the voters decide. This vote originally passed for impeachment with all the Democrats only -2. Now the question is, how many can you bring to the party to get the vote going? The voters are tired of impeachment. I think that's what's really wearing on the voters. Democratic primary voters, I can see them moving on it. Beyond that, I don't see it.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to meet my friend OB, but I think respectfully, voters are tired of the president doing impeachable things.
Well, let's fix that part of it at least. Let's get the two of you together on room. That would be fun. Okay. Thanks very much for our panel.
Love to do it.
Joel Payne and E. O'Brien Murray. And a disclaimer, Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News. Still ahead, Dick's Sporting Goods took a stand on guns and expected to pay a price. But it looks like that price has been paid in full, and now it's surging back. It's our stock of the hour, next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You don't usually find the titans of finance, business, and politics sitting around together.
There's been this transfer of royal power and royal prerogative.
But amazingly, they're nearly all here every weekday.
Let's talk about their data. What are you looking for?
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
So where does the circuit breaker come from?
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
He's got to respond, doesn't he?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It's time now for Stock of the Hour. Dick's Sporting Goods is heading for its best day since May of 2018, jumping more than 20%. The quarterly report showing little negative impact from its retreat on gun sales. And Kaylee Lyons is here with the Dick's Sporting Goods story, and it looks pretty good right now.
It was very good. This was a beat and raise quarter. The raise was actually the third time they've raised their full year earnings guidance for the year. They now raised about 15 cents on the high end. Thanks, earnings per share will go as high as $3.60. And the third quarter quarter really blew it out of the water. Earnings came in at 52 cents. That handily beat the analyst expectation, which was about 38 cents on average. And comp sales rose 6%. That was much more than the street was looking for. They only expected them to rise 3.4%. And actually, the second quarter that we've seen growth, remember, Dick's was coming off what had been 6 consecutive quarters of comp sales decline. So you're really seeing that rebound continue. And interesting, that was driven both by higher traffic and more transactions, higher ticket prices. So people not only are coming into the stores, they are spending more, and they're seeing growth across all of their major categories. That includes hardline, golf clubs, kayaks, and as well as apparel and footwear.
But as you say, it's a big turnaround from where they were. I mean, as you know, we talked to Ed Stack, the CEO, after the last quarter, and we talked about the fact that they took a really pretty aggressive stance on guns, and they expected to get hit, but they thought they'd turn it around. This is what he said.
We thought it would cost us about $250 million in sales, just about what it cost us. And now we've anniversaried that. We've made some changes in our store, repositioning some square footage. We took Hunt out of 10 stores last fourth quarter, took out of another 125 stores this spring as a test to see what it would be like without Hunt. And our last quarter comps were up 3%. We raised our earnings guidance, so it's pretty good.
So you can see that they were raising their earnings guidance. That was 3% same store. Now you're talking about 6%. And they really did reconfigure their stores and said, not so much Hunt, let's do some other things like clothing and things that we can make more money off of.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. It goes to show you it matters much more what they now offer than what they aren't offering. Because even though they've pulled guns out of 17% of their nationwide footprint, essentially, the fact that they have a better reorganized offering of things that are selling really well, like apparel and footwear, means that they are able to offset those declines. And it seems they've also maybe turned around in sentiment as well, because remember when they initially made this decision back now almost 2 years ago, there was a lot of blowback as regard to the Second Amendment issue of it, but it seems that traffic no longer is a concern.
And it wasn't the sales of the guns, it was sort of a boycott. It was saying we're not going to go buy anything there, no matter what it is. Yeah, okay. Kaylin Lyons, thank you so much. Great report on Dick's Sporting Goods. Up next, you've heard about the national security and humanitarian issues at stake on the U.S.-Mexico border, but what about the economic impact? We talk with an expert on cross-border deals with our southern neighbor. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Mixed signals on the economy. The Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Index dropped in November for the fourth month in a row, posing a challenge to retailers heading into the holiday shopping season. However, Americans snapped up new homes over the past 2 months at the fastest pace in more than a decade, which could help support fourth quarter economic growth. Ford and Tesla are going mano a mano over their trucks. Tesla chief Elon Musk showed off his new Cybertruck last week and said his truck was better than the best-selling F-150. Musk tweeted a video of the Cybertruck winning a tug-of-war with an F-150. Ford complained, saying the two trucks were not comparable, and challenged Tesla to a duel with two trucks in the same class. Musk's response, bring it on. The average cost for a Thanksgiving dinner has dropped 2.3% from last year, according to the Bloomberg Intelligence report, mostly due to lower turkey prices. Stocks have reached record highs. The Dow Jones Industrial is up 49 points, S&P 500 up 0.2%, the Nasdaq up almost 0.25%. Mark Mills, Bloomberg Radio.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
3, 2, 1. Oh no. Which button am I?
When every second counts, you can't wing it.
Guys, a little help up here?
In a home fire, you may have less than 2 minutes to get out. So make a family home fire escape plan. Then practice home fire drills at least twice a year so everyone knows what to do when they hear Prepare your family at ready.gov/firedrill. Brought to you by FEMA, the Ad Council, and Make Safe Happen.
We could call it Bloomberg awesome, but Bloomberg best is accurate and less embarrassing to say.
Analysts are raising questions about rising competition and higher costs.
June Grosso and Ed Baxter.
It is the first company to go public in the space tourism industry.
Bloomberg best.
That was AutoNation CEO Cheryl Miller.
Weekday evenings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, a judge has ordered former White House counsel Don McGahn to testify to a House committee. The panel's investigating possible presidential obstruction. Mr. Trump claims McGahn is covered by presidential immunity. The Justice Department plans to appeal the ruling. Irish Finance Minister Pascal Donohoe says any speculation about a reunified Ireland is premature. Speaking exclusively to Bloomberg News today, he said even after Brexit, the country has a long way to go.
I think we're many phases away from something like that happening. The Good Friday Agreement is very clear that there would have to be a possibility of agreement being reached to then trigger a border poll. A border poll is what then looks at the future status of Northern Ireland and whether it is part of a broader Ireland. The view of the Irish government is that the timing is not right for a poll like that in fact it would be very counterproductive.
Donohoe also told Bloomberg he believes an agreement currently in place between the European Union and the UK to prevent a hard border in Ireland is proving effective. Turns out that Mexico had a slight recession in the first half of the year. The economy shrank 0.1% from the end of 2018 through the second quarter. For the year, analysts say Mexico's GDP will grow the least since 2009. The problems include low oil output, slumping construction, and stalled services activity. Democratic presidential candidate Senator Elizabeth Warren is looking into allegations of bias against women who applied for an Apple credit card. She and Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown wrote to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau asking for information on how the agency is monitoring the lending practices of Goldman Sachs, the underwriter of the card. Both Goldman and Apple were hit with criticism after prominent Silicon Valley executives complained earlier this month. They said they received significantly higher limits on their Apple credit cards than their wives, despite having similar incomes and credit scores. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. President Trump has made a priority of securing the U.S. southern border with Mexico. And there's been a raging debate in Washington about how to address the national security and the humanitarian issues raised. But there is also a substantial economic impact of the administration's actions along the border. Welcome now, Mike McGinnis of Jones Day. Mr. McGinnis has spent 20 years on cross-border mergers and acquisitions involving Mexican and other Latin American companies after serving as in-house general counsel for GE's Sensing and Inspection Technologies Unit. Welcome. Good to have you here, Mike.
It's good to be here, David.
So let's go straight at the economic effects. Right. We just heard a report that Mexico, we know, is struggling and slipped into recession. How much of the difficulty Mexico is having is because of the problems along the border?
Yeah, so I think exactly that's exactly the point. The humanitarian crisis is something that we hear about on a daily basis. But people are not really talking about the looming business crisis that's underlining that. And I think that business crisis is partially driven by the conversations around the threats of a border closure or tariffs of up to 25% on Mexican exports. I think those things which are designed to achieve a political objective are creating a lot of business uncertainty, which is having a rippling effect through Mexico.
So there's a lot of trade across that border, both ways, U.S. and Mexico. Yeah. How much of the effects that we're seeing are because of an actual curtailing of trade? How much of it is the uncertainty that you refer to? People say, we're still trading, but we're not sure if we can keep trading.
Yeah, so I was down in Mexico during the last threat of tariffs. I think it was a up to 25% tariff on all Mexican exports in the context of discussions around immigration. And I remember I was at dinner with a number of business executives who told me that They were literally lighting candles in prayer. So the idea that the idea of a 25% tariff is really, or closing the border themselves, is really quite destructive. I think you have to kind of understand the region to get a full sense of the impact. So the border, right? The border runs across 4 U.S. states, right? 2 U.S. states, which are the largest economies in the United States, 1 U.S. state, which is one of the largest economies in the world, California. You also have 6 Mexican states, one of which is the largest economy in Mexico as well, Nuevo León. And in that region, you have 14 million people. And it's the busiest, most frequently crossed border in the world. So you have to put this in the context of $1.7 billion of product that cross that border every day, 20,000 trucks, more than 200,000 cars, more than 500,000 pedestrians on any given day are crossing that border. And when you look in that $1.7 billion worth of goods, what do you find? You find the things that Americans consume on their table. Mexican produce keeps us going during the winter. You find the auto parts that sustain the U.S. auto industry. You find the electronic supplies, which are going to be so popular and sold on this Black Friday that's coming up. So I think it really is a very deeply integrated region and zone.
We're talking with Mike McGinnis of Jones Day. This is all about trade back and forth. You specialize in investment, mergers and acquisitions across the border. What has happened there? Has that dried up because people are saying we're just not sure what the rules are going to be?
Right. So the traditional wisdom in the M&A world is that M&A thrives on certainty. Certainty from a valuation point of view in the market, certainty from a political point of view and a regulatory point of view. And right now what we're seeing is a large amount of uncertainty in Mexico. If you put in context the sort of unfriendly attitude from the north that the Mexican businesses are experiencing, then you put that in the context of a new presidential administration which sometimes has anti-business rhetoric. You'll see Mexican executives being sandwiched between northern and southern pressure, which is creating a lot of uncertainty in their world, and it's having a real palpable effect on the M&A market. So just to give you a granular number, in the first half of 2019, there were 78 M&A deals for a value of $5 billion. Contrast that to last year, that's a 35% dip. Contrast it to 2 years ago, it's a 50% dip.
And is that ingoing or outgoing from the United States point of view? Is it more U.S. companies investing in Mexican companies or the reverse?
It's actually, it's more U.S. going in, and in fact, the cross-border M&A statistics are quite dismal in terms of going out from Mexico to the United States. I think we had something like 50 transactions in the run-up to the last 2 years, and just 2 transactions in the first half of 2019 from Mexico to the United States.
We're talking with Mike McGinnis of Jones Day. You mentioned AMLO, the new president, and he has said some things that some of the business community has been nervous about, I think it's fair to say. You also have Pemex, a major driver of the Mexican economy with some difficulties in the oil production area as well as the price of oil. How can you sort out, if you can, what's going on with the uncertainty about the border and effects on the Mexican economy and the U.S. economy along the border from the new regime and Pemex?
Well, I definitely think I think they're in a cycle to begin with. I think that there's uncertainty that's driving a slowdown in the business. I think that the Mexican businesses have been confronted by these tariffs and have had to look at different opportunities in different markets to where they're going to trade in the event that there actually is a large tariff put on the border. I think all that combination of things and the business cycle has brought Mexico into recession.
So Mike, is this entirely separate from USMCA and NAFTA and the uncertainty about that? Because we also have that, particularly with the auto industry, for example. I guess that would bring some certainty exactly into what the world's over. But what you're talking about, just the border security issues by themselves?
I think when we think about what's happening at the U.S.-Mexico border, when we think about trade across that border, I think we really need to think about it in the context of the U.S. economy as well. And when I think about it in the context of the U.S. economy, I think about it through the prism of the U.S. auto industry and the U.S. electronics industry. And just to give you kind of a sense of that, if you look at how the U.S. auto industry works, it operates on lean manufacturing. Principles use just-in-time delivery of components and spare parts, so they depend on things that cross the border from Canada and from Mexico. Put in the context of that 16% of the auto parts that are used in the U.S. auto industry come from Mexico. And then think about a 25% tariff or the closure of the border and the ripple effect that will have on those businesses.
Mike McGinnis of Jones Day here. A final question. We hear a lot about the wall. It's all about the wall. It's people with the wall. The fact is, an awful lot of the trade doesn't go around a wall. It goes through the regular border crossings, right? from a point of view of certainty, would we be better off with just saying, okay, go ahead and build the wall and then get back to regular trade negotiations?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the trade passes through, obviously it arrives on trucks and cars and passes through sort of the typical international lane. It's not part of things that are passing over or under or around the wall. So yes, I agree. I think fostering an economic trade environment is the most important thing in terms of building certainty, and then that certainty will drive economic results both in Mexico and the United States.
It's a really helpful perspective. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. Really good to have you here. That's Mike McGinnis. He's a partner at Jones Day. Coming up, President Trump today signed an executive order to address the pressing problem of the disappearance of Native Americans. We talk with the governor of one of the state's most effective, and that's Mike Dunleavy, Republican of Alaska. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
You're not supposed to begin headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks have reached record highs as investors search for signs of progress in China's comments about prospects for a Phase 1 trade deal. Treasuries and most European sovereign bonds are up. The S&P, the Dow, and the NASDAQ all climbed to all-time highs after China said that Sino-American trade negotiators reached consensus on certain issues in a phone call and agreed to stay in contact on the remaining points. Oil prices edged higher amid hopes that trade talks between the U.S. and China will ultimately result in a deal that sustains global economic growth and energy demand. Alex Longley, Bloomberg News oil reporter in London, says any benefit to oil from a U.S.-China trade deal could be short-term.
This is clearly a market that all year has been looking for direction from that trade agreement, and clearly if we get some sort of deal signed, there'll be a lift. The question then is what comes next. Oil demand has been treacherous this year. I think Goldman Sachs said commodity demand generally has been broadly terrible so far in 2019. And with 2020 approaching, people are now looking towards next year's balances and how things look.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500 is up 0.25%, up 7. The Dow's up 0.2%, up 47. And the NASDAQ's up 0.3%, up 25. The 10-year is up 4/30 seconds with a yield of 1.73%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 0.4% at $58.22 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.2% at